"Daddy, she's crying." Those three simple words, whispered by 5-year-old Hannah, shattered the carefully constructed fortress of ice Minjun had built around his heart over the past 3 years. Standing amidst the chaotic swell of last-minute Christmas Eve shoppers in the upscale Galleria, Minjun stood out like a jagged obsidian shard in a sea of red and green velvet. He wore his signature attire, a bespoke, razor-sharp black suit that cost more than most people's cars, paired with a crisp, stark white collared shirt that accentuated the tan of his skin and the sharpness of his jawline. He was a man who commanded fear and respect in equal measure, known throughout the underworld and the city's high-rises simply as the chairman. He was a Korean Mafia boss, a man whose word was law and whose silence was a death sentence. But here, gripping Hannah's small, mitten-clad hand, he was just a father trying to survive the holidays. His security detail, 2 burly men in matching dark suits and earpieces, stood a discreet 5 feet away, their eyes scanning the crowd for threats, not realizing the emotional devastation was about to come from within the food court. "Who is crying, Hannah?" Minjun asked, his voice a low baritone that usually sent shivers down the spines of rival gang leaders. Today, it was softened for the little girl who looked up at him with big, soulful brown eyes that reminded him so painfully of the woman who had walked away. "Look, Daddy. Over there. It's Mommy." Hannah tugged at the sleeve of his expensive suit jacket, pointing a gloved finger across the bustling expanse of tables. Minjun's heart, a muscle he had trained to be steady in the face of gunfire and betrayal, stopped dead in his chest. The ambient noise of the mall, the tinny rendition of Jingle Bell Rock, the chatter of thousands of people, the hiss of espresso machines, faded into a dull roar. It had been 3 years. 3 years since Amara had walked out of the sprawling, fortified estate that served as their home. 3 years since the silence had descended upon his life, broken only by Hannah's questions. She had left a note, claiming she needed to find herself, that the darkness of his world was consuming her light. 3 years of Minjun learning to be both the ruthlessly efficient Korean Mafia boss and the tender, attentive father to their daughter. "Hannah, honey, I don't think," Minjun began, his instinct to protect his daughter from disappointment kicking in. But the words died in his throat as his gaze followed her pointing finger. There she was. Amara stood near a pretzel stand, isolated in the crowd. She was unmistakable. A stunning, 27-year-old African woman with deep, radiant skin that seemed to absorb the mall's harsh lighting and turn it into a glow. Her long, jet-black hair cascaded down her back in sleek waves, a stark contrast to the bright winter coat she wore. But her posture was broken. One hand covered her mouth, and even from this distance, Minjun's sharp eyes caught the glint of tears streaming down her face. She looked thinner than he remembered, her once vibrant, queen-like presence subdued by an invisible weight. "Daddy, she's crying," Hannah repeated, her voice small with a concern that pierced Minjun's soul. Before Minjun could issue a command to his bodyguards or tighten his grip, Hannah broke free. The little girl, a beautiful blend of her parents with her father's straight black hair and her mother's rich, dark skin, darted through the crowd. "Hannah."
"No. Minjun box."
His security detail lurched forward instantly, hands moving toward their coats out of habit. "Stand down." Minjun growled at them, a command that froze them instantly before he pushed himself into the sea of shoppers. He moved with the predatory grace of a tiger, parting the crowd not with politeness, but with an aura of danger that made people instinctively step aside. He had to keep sight of Hannah's bobbing red hat. "Mommy," Hannah called out, her voice cutting through the noise. Amara turned, her tear-stained face freezing in absolute shock. The pretzel she had been staring at unseeingly was forgotten. She looked down to see the little girl sprinting toward her, a missile of unconditional love. Amara dropped to her knees right on the dirty mall floor, her hands trembling violently as she reached out. "Hannah," she gasped, the air leaving her lungs. Hannah crashed into her, burying her face in Amara's coat. Amara wrapped her arms around the daughter she hadn't held in 3 years, a sob ripping from her throat that was raw with grief. Minjun stopped 10 feet away. He stood like a statue, a monolith in his black suit and white collar. A storm of emotions raged inside him, threatening to crack his stoic mask. Anger, confusion, betrayal, and something else, that familiar, magnetic pull he had felt the first time he saw her, years ago, before the power, before the blood, before the fall. Hannah, Amara whispered, pulling back to look at her daughter's face, tracing the slope of her nose, the curve of her cheek. Oh my God, look at you. You've gotten so big. Minjun finally found his voice. It was cold, the voice of the Korean Mafia boss who did not tolerate unauthorized variables in his life. Hannah, come back here. The tone was sharper than he intended. It carried the weight of his position, the authority of the syndicate. Both Amara and Hannah flinched. Amara looked up, her dark eyes locking with his. For a second, he saw the fear there, not just of the situation but of him. Of what he was. Minjun, Amara whispered, standing slowly, though she kept a hand on Hannah's shoulder. I didn't expect to see you here. Clearly, Minjun replied, his face a mask of indifference. He signaled with a twitch of his finger, and his 2 bodyguards stepped closer, creating a perimeter that pushed the curious onlookers back. The atmosphere around them dropped in temperature. Come here, Hannah. We are leaving. But Daddy, Mommy sad. Hannah insisted, her small face scrunched with worry. She looked from her powerful, terrifying father to her weeping mother. We can't leave her alone on Christmas. Minjun felt the weight of dozens of eyes on them. People were watching. They saw a wealthy, dangerous-looking Asian man, a beautiful, crying African woman, and a mixed-race child caught in the middle. He hated exposure. He hated vulnerability. He took a step closer, his Italian leather shoes clicking ominously on the tile. He lowered his voice, the menace dropping to a whisper only she could hear. This isn't the place, Amara. Please, Amara said, her voice shaking but holding a thread of the dignity he remembered. Could we talk? Just for a minute? Please, Minjun. Minjun wanted to say no. Every logical part of his brain, the part that ran a criminal empire, the part that calculated risks and eliminated threats, screamed at him to take Hannah and walk away. She had left. She had abandoned them. She had no rights here. But then he looked at her eyes. He saw a desperation he had never seen before, even in the worst days of their marriage. And he looked at Hannah, who was holding Amara's hand with a grip that said she would never let go again. 5 minutes, Minjun conceded, checking his Rolex. There is a coffee shop around the corner. It is secure. He gestured to his lead security officer, who nodded and spoke into his sleeve to clear the way. As they walked in tense silence, Minjun couldn't help but notice how Mara kept stealing glances at Hannah, drinking in every detail of the daughter she'd abandoned. It made his blood boil, and yet, it made his heart ache. What right did she have to look at Hannah with such love after leaving? The coffee shop was mercifully quiet, cleared out by the sheer force of Minjun's security team standing at the entrance. Minjun ordered a hot chocolate for Hannah and a black coffee for himself. Amara asked for tea, her voice barely audible. Once they were seated in a secluded booth, Hannah was happily distracted by the mountain of whipped cream on her drink. Minjun sat stiffly, his posture perfect, his black suit jacket unbuttoned to reveal the stark, white shirt underneath. He looked every inch the Korean Mafia boss holding court. What brings you back to the city? Minjun asked, skipping the pleasantries. I thought you wanted to be anywhere but near my world. Amara wrapped her hands around her warm mug, staring into the dark liquid. My mother is sick. Cancer. I came back to help take care of her. Minjun felt a pang of sympathy despite himself. He had respected Amara's mother. She was a strong woman who had never approved of Minjun's business, but had loved him for loving her daughter. I am sorry to hear that, he said stiffly. She's been asking about Hannah, Amara continued, her eyes fixed on the table, unable to meet his intense gaze. About you, too. We are fine, Minjun said curtly, cutting off any attempt at intimacy. We have been fine for 3 years. The organization is stable. Hannah is in the best private school. We lack nothing. Amara flinched, as if he had slapped her. I deserve that, she whispered. I deserve all your anger, Minjun. I deserve your hatred. What I did it was unforgivable. Then why did you do it? The question that had haunted him for 3 years finally escaped his lips. It wasn't the Mafia Don asking, it was the husband. Why did you leave us? Was my money not enough? Was my protection not enough? Amara's eyes filled with fresh tears. She looked up, and for the first time, she truly saw him. She saw the pain behind the power. It wasn't about the money, and it wasn't about you not loving me, she said, her voice trembling.
You was sick, Minhyun.
Not physically. Mentally. I had postpartum depression that never went away. It just got worse and worse. She took a shaky breath. And it wasn't just the depression. It was the fear. Minjun, I was married to a Korean mafia boss. Every time you left the house, I didn't know if you were coming back. Every time a car drove by slowly, I thought it was a hit squad. I was drowning in anxiety. I convinced myself that I was weak, that I was a liability to you, that my fear would eventually get Hannah hurt.
Minhyun stared at her, processing her words.
He remembered the months before she left. How she had withdrawn. How she would cry for no reason. How she had stopped eating. He had attributed it to unhappiness in their marriage, or perhaps that she had grown tired of the restricted life he forced her to live for her safety. He had never considered that she was trying to protect them from her own perceived weakness. I thought, her voice broke, I thought you and Hannah would be better off without me. I thought you needed a wife who was strong, who could handle this life. Not a broken woman who cried every time the phone rang. Why didn't you tell me? He asked, his voice softer, the edge of the dawn fading. I was ashamed, Amara confessed. I thought I was failing as a mother, as a wife. And then, the depression twisted my thoughts. I convinced myself you'd be happier if I just disappeared. Hannah, who had been quietly sipping her hot chocolate, suddenly spoke up, her voice cutting through the heavy atmosphere. Did you stop loving us, Mommy? Amara's face crumpled. She reached across the table, ignoring the startled look of the bodyguards by the door, and took Hannah's sticky hand. No, baby. Never. Not for 1 second. I thought about you every single day. I have pictures of you all over my wall at my mom's house. I love you more than anything in the world. Then why didn't you come back? Hannah's innocent question hung in the air, heavier than any verdict Minjun had ever delivered. Because I was scared, Amara admitted, tears spilling over. Scared Daddy wouldn't want me anymore. Scared I'd hurt you again by leaving if I couldn't handle it. Scared that I had lost the right to be your mommy. Minjun watched as his daughter processed this information. Her small brow furrowed in concentration, her mixed heritage evident in her features, the perfect synthesis of the two people sitting at this table. Then, with the simple wisdom only children possess, Hannah said, "But you're here now." Those 4 words hit Minjun like a physical blow. But you're here now. She was here. After 3 years of silence, of cold beds, of explaining to a toddler why Mommy wasn't there to tuck her in, Amara was here. Where are you staying? Minjun found himself asking. At my mom's house. I've been there for about a week. Amara wiped her eyes. Tomorrow is Christmas, Minjun stated. I know, Amara said, looking down at her hands. I was at the mall buying a gift for my mom when I saw you both. I didn't mean to intrude. Hannah tugged at Minjun's sleeve, the fabric of the expensive suit bunching in her small fist. Daddy, can Mommy come to our house for Christmas? Please. Minjun looked at his daughter's hopeful face, then at Amara's surprised, fearful one. 1,000 reasons to say no raced through his mind. Security protocols. The emotional risk. The fact that she had crushed him. But then he remembered something his own father, the former head of the syndicate, had told him before he passed. A man who cannot forgive his family has no future. Dinner is at 6, Minjun said, his voice regaining its composure. Nothing fancy. Just the staff preparing a meal. Amara's eyes widened. Are you sure, Minjun? No, Minjun admitted honestly, his dark eyes boring into hers. But it is Christmas. And Hannah wants you there. And you? Amara asked softly. What do you want, Minjun? Minjun looked at her, really looked at her for the first time since their unexpected reunion. Behind the sadness in her eyes, he could still see the traces of the woman he had fallen in love with. The woman who had looked past his reputation, past the Korean Mafia boss title, and seen the man beneath. I want, he began, then paused, choosing his words carefully. I want Hannah to have a good Christmas. It wasn't the whole truth, but it was all he could offer right now. The hurt was still too raw. Thank you, Amara whispered. I'll bring dessert. As they prepared to leave, Hannah surprised them both by taking Amara's hand. I missed you, Mommy, she said simply. Amara knelt down, ignoring the dirt on the floor, tears flowing freely now. I missed you too, baby. More than you'll ever know. Minjun watched this exchange with a lump in his throat. He signaled his men. Escort Ms. Amara to her vehicle. Ensure she arrives at her mother's house safely. Put a detail on the house for protection. Amara looked up, surprised. Minjun, you don't have to. You are the mother of my child. Minjun cut her off, his voice stern. You are under my protection now. Do not argue. The next morning, Christmas Day dawned bright and clear, a fresh blanket of snow covering the extensive grounds of Minjun's estate. The mansion was a fortress, surrounded by high walls and security cameras, but inside, it was warm. Minjun woke early, his mind racing. Would she actually show up? He found Hannah already awake, sitting by the massive Christmas tree in her silk pajamas. Santa came, she exclaimed when she saw him. He sure did, Minjun smiled, pushing aside his worries to focus on his daughter's joy. They spent the morning opening presents. Hannah received everything she could ever want, from toys to gadgets, bought with the kind of money only a mafia empire could generate. But as the day progressed, Minjun noticed Hannah growing increasingly distracted, her eyes darting to the grand entrance every few minutes. She will be here, Hannah, he assured her, though he wasn't entirely convinced himself. At 5:45 p.m., the gate buzzer sounded. The head of security radioed Minjun. Sir, Ms. Amara is at the gate. Let her in, Minjun commanded. Hannah raced to the massive oak double doors, Minjun following close behind, smoothing his black sweater. When he opened the door, Amara stood on the porch, snowflakes dusting her long black hair, holding a bakery box and a small gift bag. She looked breathtaking, nervous, and hopeful. Merry Christmas, she said tentatively. Merry Christmas, Mommy, Hannah screamed, throwing her arms around Amara's legs. Come in, Minjun said, stepping aside, his presence filling the doorway. Dinner is ready. Amara entered the house slowly, her eyes taking in the familiar surroundings. The marble floors, the high ceilings, the shadows where security guards stood silently. You kept the same decorations, she observed, noticing the handmade ornaments on the tree, the stockings hanging from the massive stone fireplace, including hers. Minjun realized with a start. He'd never had the heart to take it down. Hannah insisted. He lied smoothly, though Amara's knowing glance told him she saw through it. Dinner was served in the grand dining room. It was awkward at first, conversation stilted and polite. Minjun sat at the head of the table, Amara to his right, Hannah to his left. But Hannah, oblivious to the tension, chattered happily about school, her friends, and the presents Santa had brought. Gradually, the atmosphere warmed. Memories of happier times softened the edges of their shared pain. After dinner, they moved to the formal living room. Amara gave Hannah the gift she'd brought, a beautiful, hand-painted snow globe with a ballerina inside. I have something for you too, Minjun, Amara said hesitantly, handing him the small gift bag. Minjun took it, his gloved hands brushing hers. Inside was a framed photograph. It was black and white, showing him holding newborn Hannah in the hospital, his face a mixture of awe and terror. The face of a new father, not a mafia boss. My mom took it, Amara explained. I found it when I was going through her things. I thought you should have it. You look happy. Minjun stared at the photo, emotion tightening his throat. He rarely allowed himself to look back at the past. Thank you, he managed, his voice gruff. As the evening wore on, Hannah began to yawn. Time for bed, princess, Minjun said, standing up. Can mommy tuck me in? Hannah asked hopefully. Minjun and Amara exchanged glances. This was dangerous territory. This was playing house when the house was broken. If that's okay with your father, Amara said carefully, deferring to the authority she knew Minjun held.
Minhyun nodded slowly.
Of course. He stood in the hallway, leaning against the wall, listening as Amara read Hannah a bedtime story. Her voice was soft, melodic, the same voice that used to soothe him after a night of violence and negotiations. When she finished, he heard Hannah ask, Will you be here tomorrow, Mommy? There was a pause. A heavy silence. I don't know, sweetheart, Amara replied. That's something your daddy and I need to talk about. I want you to stay, Hannah said sleepily. Forever. Minjun stepped away from the door, his heart heavy. When Amara emerged from Hannah's room, her eyes were red-rimmed. She's asleep, she said. Thank you for letting me do that, Minjun. She is your daughter, too, Minjun acknowledged. They stood in the hallway, the distance between them filled with 3 years of unsaid words. Would you like a drink?
Minhyun offered.
I have a vintage scotch. That would be nice, Amara said. They moved to Minjun's private study, a room lined with books and smelling of leather and cigar smoke, the heart of his operation. Minjun poured 2 glasses and handed one to her. You have done an amazing job with her, Minjun, Amara said quietly, looking at a photo of Hannah on his desk. She's happy. Well-adjusted. I was so afraid. Afraid of what? Minjun asked, leaning against his mahogany desk. That I'd broken her when I left. That she'd be angry or withdrawn. Or that she would hate me. Kids are resilient, Minjun said. And I never spoke badly of you to her. I told her you loved her, but needed to be away. That you were fighting a battle I couldn't help you with. Why? Amara asked, looking at him with wide eyes. Why would you do that for me after I abandoned you? You are a ruthless man, Minjun. Everyone knows that. Why were you kind to my memory? Minjun sighed, taking a sip of the burning amber liquid. Because I knew something was wrong, Amara. I didn't understand it was depression at the time. I thought maybe my life, this life, he gestured to the room, was too much. I thought I was the poison. But I never believed you stopped loving Hannah. And deep down, I hoped you didn't stop loving me. Amara set her glass down and took a step toward him. I never stopped loving either of you, she confessed. That's what made it so hard. I loved you both so much, but I felt like I was watching my life through a glass wall. I was drowning. And now? Minjun asked, his gaze intense. How do you feel now?
Better, Amara said.
I got help. Therapy. Medication. It took a long time, but I started to feel like myself again. That's when the guilt really hit me. By then, I thought it was too late. I thought the great Mafia boss Minjun would never forgive a traitor. Is that what you think you are? A traitor? I abandoned my post, Amara said, her voice breaking. I abandoned my family. Minjun was quiet for a long moment. He set his glass down and walked over to her. He didn't touch her, but his presence enveloped her. I was angry for a long time, he admitted. Hurt. Confused. My men wanted to find you. I told them to stand down. That was the hardest order I ever gave. Why? Because if I brought you back by force, I would never know if you truly wanted to be here. Amara wiped away a tear. When I saw you both at the mall yesterday, it was like the universe was giving me a sign. I've been trying to work up the courage to contact you since I got back to town. And what would you have said? That I'm sorry. That I made the biggest mistake of my life. That I don't expect forgiveness, but I want a chance to be in Hannah's life again, in whatever way you think is best. Minjun studied the woman before him. She was stronger now. He could see it in her posture. The fear of him was fading, replaced by a determination to be a mother. Hannah needs her mother, Minjun said finally. We can figure out a schedule. Start slow. Visitation. Relief washed over Amara's face. Thank you, Minjun. That's more than I deserve. It's not about what you deserve, Minjun said, his voice dropping an octave. It's about what Hannah needs. Amara nodded. And what about us? Can we ever be friends? Minjun looked at her lips, then up to her eyes. I don't know, he answered honestly. That might take more time. Trust is the currency of my world, Amara. And you bankrupted us. She flinched, but nodded, accepting the blow. As the clock struck midnight, marking the end of Christmas Day, Amara stood to leave. I should go. My mom will be wondering. Minjun walked her to the door. Tell your mother I said hello. And that if she needs anything for her treatment, anything at all, she calls me. I will, Amara promised. And, Minjun, thank you for today. As she turned to go, a small voice called from the top of the grand staircase. Mommy, are you leaving? They both looked up to see Hannah standing there in her pajamas, clutching her teddy bear. I was just saying goodnight to your daddy, sweetheart, Amara explained. But you'll come back tomorrow? Hannah asked, her voice small and uncertain.
Amara looked at Minjun.
He gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod. The permission of the dawn. Yes, Hannah, Amara said, smiling through her tears. I'll come back tomorrow. Hannah's face lit up with a smile that could power the entire estate.
Good, she said.
And then she added the two words that would change the trajectory of the most powerful crime lord in the city. We're family. Those simple words hung in the crisp air between them. We're family. Not we were family, but we are family. Present tense. Unbroken. Despite everything, the betrayal, the years apart, the darkness of Minjun's job, something shifted inside him. A crack in the obsidian wall he'd built around his heart. He looked at Amara and saw the same realization dawning on her face. Their daughter, in her innocent wisdom, had cut through years of pain and regret with a truth so simple it was impossible to deny. Yes, Minjun found himself saying, his voice thick with emotion. Yes, we are. After tucking Hannah back into bed, Minjun returned to find Amara still standing by the door, stunned. She never forgot me, Amara whispered. After everything, she still sees us as a family. Kids see the truth sometimes better than adults do, Minjun replied softly. As Amara prepared to leave again, she paused with her hand on the doorknob. Minjun, I know I have no right to ask this, but do you think, is there any chance for us?
Minjun looked to her.
He saw the beautiful African woman who had once been his queen. He saw the mother of his child. He saw the only person who had ever made him feel human. Not now, he said. Not soon, he took a deep breath. But someday. 3 years ago, he would have said no without hesitation. He would have banished her. But tonight, watching her with Hannah, seeing the woman she had become, he couldn't give that answer. I don't know, he said honestly. But I am willing to find out. The smile that bloomed on Amara's face was like the first ray of sunrise after the longest night. That's all I can ask for, she said. As Minjun closed the heavy door behind her, locking it with a secure bolt, he leaned against it, overwhelmed. Christmas had always been about miracles, but he never expected to receive one of his own. The journey ahead wouldn't be easy. He was still a Korean Mafia boss. His life was dangerous. Trust, once broken, took time to rebuild. But for the first time in 3 years, Minjun allowed himself to hope. Hope that his daughter might grow up with both her parents. Hope that the wounds of the past might finally begin to heal. And it had all started with those 2 simple words from a 5-year-old girl. We're family. 6 months later. Minjun sat on a park bench, his black suit jacket draped over the back, his white shirt sleeves rolled up, a rare display of relaxation. His security detail was still there, but they were further back, blending into the trees. He watched Amara push Hannah on the swings, their daughter's laughter ringing out like a bell across the playground. The past months had been filled with careful steps forward. Family dinners at the mansion, weekend outings under heavy guard, honest conversations in therapy sessions. Amara had asked him to join. After Hannah went to bed, Amara had moved into a high-security apartment building owned by Minjun's company, close enough to be present in Hannah's life, but giving Minjun the space he still needed. She had proven herself reliable. She showed up when she promised. She never missed a moment. And somewhere along the way, Minjun had started to look forward to seeing her, to sharing stories about their day, to rediscovering the woman he had fallen in love with so many years ago. "Daddy, watch me," Hannah called, pumping her legs to swing higher. "I see you, princess," Minjun called back, a genuine smile breaking his usually stern face. Amara caught his eye across the playground and smiled too. A smile full of gratitude. And something else. Something that made his heart beat a little faster. That evening, after Hannah had gone to bed at the mansion, Minjun and Amara sat on the expansive stone patio, the summer night warm around them. The city lights twinkled in the distance, a city Minjun ruled, but right now, he felt like just a man. "I have something to tell you," Amara said, her voice nervous but steady. "I've been offered a permanent position at the design firm here in the city. I'm staying for good." Minjun felt a surge of relief he hadn't expected. The fear that she would run again had been a constant shadow, but it was fading. "That is excellent news, Amara." "There's more," she continued, turning to face him. "I've been talking to my therapist about us, about our family. She thinks we've been making amazing progress, but she also warned me not to rush things." "She is wise," Minjun agreed. "We cannot just pick up where we left off. You're different. I am different." "No," Amara said, reaching out to touch his hand. Her skin looked beautiful against his. "But maybe we could start something new, something better, built on everything we've learned, built on honesty this time." Minjun looked at her in the soft patio light. He saw the strength in her jaw, the love in her eyes. He thought about the loneliness of the throne he sat on. He thought about the joy in Hannah's eyes when they were all together. He turned his hand over and interlaced his fingers with hers. His grip was strong, protective. "I would like that," Minjun said simply. As they sat together under the stars, Minjun thought about the Christmas Eve that had changed everything. How a chance meeting in a crowded mall and a child's simple observation, "Daddy, she's crying," had opened the door to healing. Life wasn't a fairy tale. He was still a dangerous man in a dangerous world. There would be hard days ahead. But sitting here now, with Amara's hand in his and their daughter sleeping peacefully inside the fortress he had built for them, Minjun knew one thing for certain. They were family, and this time, the dragon would burn down the whole world to keep them together.